All right, the Hangout is live. We've got 0 viewers so far. Hopefully everybody will get on this link soon. If you're listening or if we're recording, I'm gonna wait a couple minutes before I get started and then we can see. Let's see what's going on here. Let me post the Hangout link and then we can go from there. Live streaming. All right.
Are you Twittering it?
Am I Twittering it?
Mm-hmm.
CMC Ice is here. He's asking about the Twittering possibilities here. Okay, and reply. Okay.
Or facing?
I'm not facing anything, darling. All right. Here we go. All right. If anybody wants to join the Google Hangout, there is the event. And I would love for you to join because that's how I can get your questions. I can't get them through YouTube. I can only get them through the Google Hangout. Or if you want to tweet me, tweet the questions. I'm at Normal Wine. Okay. So we're going to start off by saying, first of all, we are not in our normal venue. If you have taken online classes before, we're at my mother's house on Long Island. And we talked about some of the Long Island wines in the podcast, and that was great. I'm excited to see that the shelves are finally populated here with Long Island wines. And, you know, I love the idea of drinking local if you have the opportunity to drink something good. If not, forget it. Okay, so what are our rules of food and wine pairing, MCIs? Of course, he's appearing off camera. We can't show you his face. Some of the folks who've taken online classes before have seen him, and Ellie usually makes an appearance, frankly, in the online classes, not for any other reason than that she's kind of annoying and always around, but Charlie is here.
Look over the fence.
You look over the fence?
Yeah, like, what was his name, Wilson?
What was that show?
Oh.
The one with the criminal, Tool Time one.
Yeah.
Okay. So anywho, I think that, you know, we have some basic rules for food and wine pairing, and Thanksgiving is no different. We've discussed this before. So you have, you know, you have to consider the weight of the food. You have to consider the structure of the wine, and you have to consider what the dominant or final flavors are in your mouth when you're eating and drinking together. So if you have that opportunity to kind of think about those 3 things, then you know that Thanksgiving is particularly difficult because it's so varied. I mean, what are we having? What's my mom making me make tomorrow? I have to make like 5 things tomorrow. I don't really know how to do any of that, but you know, with a recipe, turkey. I'm not making turkey tomorrow.
Sweet potatoes?
No, I think my uncle's making the.
Are there green beans? That could have been something I should
green beans. You should have asked for green beans. I think the green beans, they ordered a turkey. So, but I think that the important things to think about, we talked about in the Thanksgiving podcast. So if you've listened to the Thanksgiving podcast, I think this gives you a very good basis for understanding the fundamentals of like, okay, let's, you know, figure out what you should be thinking about. So sweet, or do you have something sweet on your table? Do you have something savory on your table? All of those kinds of things are super important in, you know, figuring out whether or not there's like, you know, whether or not you're going to use one wine versus another wine. So, of course, if you're going to do something sweet off dry, I'm definitely going to recommend that. And we're going to go out. Actually, tomorrow I'll take pictures of what we wind up getting. But we're going to wind up getting some off-dry wine. We'll have some rosé, and we will have all the things I recommend. Turkey. Man, we got a Turkish wine. Can you bring that over here?
Where is it?
It's over there. I found a Turkish wine for $12.
For Turkey Day.
Yeah, for Turkey Day. How perfect is that? Oh, look, everybody's getting a viewing of your back, MCIs.
Is it the Yakult?
Yes, it's that rare wine. Oh, look, everybody can see you from afar. Okay, so if you're interested, here's my Turkish wine, I guess, for Turkey Day. And you can see it and enjoy it. All right, so I'm going to take some questions from Twitter. Adam is asking, listen to your latest podcast about matching wine with the type of turkey. What if you're a guest and you aren't sure what there will be? I think in that case, Adam, first of all, it's a great question because a lot of us are going to other people's houses. We have no idea what what people are going to serve, how they're going to cook it, all of that kind of stuff. So I think that the best thing to do is to get the jack of all trades wine. Didn't you mention that the rosé is really the jack of all trades? I'd bring a rosé. First of all, the chances of your host having a rosé or thinking about rosé for Thanksgiving, very slim. The other thing you could bring is you could bring that off-dry wine because I think it's going to go really well with salty food. So that would be my suggestion. And, generally speaking, even though it is not proportional to quality, the off-dry wines tend to be underpriced for what they are. Go German. If I were going to, make that choice, I would definitely do a German Riesling because the quality for what you get is just ridiculous, or the quality to price ratio, which everybody loves talking about, but I think is a factor. So I would either do rosé or I would do an off-dry wine. And, honestly, I would just get something good because you don't know if your hosts are going to be interested in wine or if they're going to have purchased good wine. So just make sure there's something you can drink and offer to open it as soon as the food arrives and say, oh, I'd love for us to enjoy the wine I brought. I brought it specifically to match the food. Again, it's all about the presentation, about etiquette. But I think a lot of people accept that wine. Did we talk about that in a podcast one time? Somebody had that question.
Yeah, I think it was last year.
It was about what do you do if you bring the wine and they have crappy wine and, then
You don't want to drink it.
Right. You're not interested in drinking it. And yet, you don't want to tell them to open the bottle that you bought.
Hey, this is way better than your garbage here.
You really should. You should emphasize, I think, when you have the opportunity that, the wine is for everyone to drink and that it's super delicious and, that it was made, that you made the pairing. You were very thoughtful about the pairing and thought specifically about how it would match and blah, blah, blah. I think that would be a great one to do. So that is the etiquette on that. If anybody else has any questions, I would encourage you, if you're in the Google Hangout screen, to hold on a second. I'm just going to send this link to somebody right now. I would encourage you guys to go on into the Hangout and type your questions because unfortunately, even though it's live and interactive, I do not have, it's not two-way. So unlike the classes, if you take classes, I see that some of you are on who do take classes, then we can talk back and forth and you can ask questions, but this is a one-way stream. So you've got to type me your questions either at Normal Wine on Facebook or inside the app itself.
You need a 1-800 number so people can call in.
Well, we'll see if I wind up, getting on the radio or something. Right. We'll see. Okay, so what are some other tips as we're thinking about tomorrow? Because we're going to be doing the wine shopping for our family tomorrow. My mother has already told us what we're having, and I think I'm going to be trying to follow as best I can what we talked about on the podcast, which is to get mainly American wines this year and see how they fare. Although I'm probably going to go off the rails and get a German.
Are we going to try to get some local ones?
We are going to try to get some local wines. I think, a Cabernet Franc is not a bad option. Cab Franc is delicious. All right, so Douglas Trapasso. Douglas, you didn't tell me, by the way, that you know all these fancy people from the from the Uncorked show. I'm curious. We can have a conversation offline about this, about how it was not quite that popular among W. Blake Gray, but we can talk about that. My favorite pairing for pumpkin pie. Why are you saying So MCIs, I just want to be very clear that MCIs hate pumpkin pie, but I really like it. Carrot cake. Oh my gosh, Douglas, I love carrot cake.
But why do I hate pumpkin?
You barfed, right?
Yes.
Yeah, not
that was
good.
The last thing I ate right after, or right while getting a stomach virus.
And it just poisoned you
Yeah,
forever.
because I had a huge Thanksgiving meal.
And then
And so
pumpkin
there
pie.
was a lot to
I
come
can
up.
see it. All right, so pumpkin pie. Let's think about the components. So this is really, I hope that if you're listening to this, that you can catch on to sort of how I'm going to analyze pairing. Because when we think about this is not about, is it pumpkin pie or, okay, so I have like a set answer for that, because I never do that with pairing, and I don't think you should either. So if we think about the like the components that go into pumpkin pie, you have a buttery, like flaky crust, right? So that's one thing. You've got a vegetable, or I guess a pumpkin is technically a fruit because it's got seeds, right?
Wow.
No?
Nerd.
Okay, and then you've got this cinnamon spice that's very strong, cinnamon, nutmeg, those baking spices. And there's a freshness. It's also served cold usually. So you have that going on also. Carrot cake has a similar note to it. So I'm sort of glad that you didn't go chocolate and completely like mess me up here, Douglas. But I think the thing about carrot cake is you've got the cream cheese frosting, which has a lot of sugar in it and is absolutely delicious. You have, sometimes you have nuts, you've got raisins in there, so you have a little bit of sweetness. And then you have that cinnamon, nutmeg, baking spice component once again. So if you think about all of those things together, you're definitely in a white dessert wine category. I'm never going to recommend a dry wine with any of that. So I would say you could go with a demi-sec champagne, which I really think is a fabulous pairing because it just lightens everything up. A Moscato d'Asti. Now, Douglas, I know you know the difference between Moscato from the US or from other parts and Moscato d'Asti. Asti has just beautiful, very light, very fragrant lime kind of flavors, delicious. And I would highly recommend that with both the carrot cake and the pumpkin. The other way that you could go is you could go with a Muscat from the south of France, so some sort of Vendu Naturel, and that would work too. But I would definitely just make sure you don't go for a dry wine. That's just not a good idea. So, yeah, so that is, so Sauterne, Douglas is asking about Sauterne or Barsac. You could do that. I just think you might want to save yourself a little bit of money because I'm not sure that those aren't too heavy and too rich to go with the pumpkin pie. And because I like the idea of something that is a little bit lighter. I like the idea of that Moscato d'Asti, that brightness. So Douglas, if you were listening, that is the answer to your question. All right, let's see if anybody else is weighing in on Facebook. And again, if you're on the Hangout, you can go over to the side. There's a little button off to your left that says chat. Just click on that and pop your question in and you will show right up, okay? And there you go. All right. Let me just check Facebook. MCIs, do you have any questions?
What about pecan pie?
That's a really great question. Pecan pie. Well, I prefer chocolate pecan pie. You know that.
Yeah.
Although I have messed it up several times and it's been absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, it was like one time.
That one time it was
slightly less than perfect.
The problem with it wasn't sweet. Nasty. So I would definitely, for regular pecan pie, we're talking about not cinnamon spices there. We're talking about something very, very sugary, right? It's just like pure sugar, basically. And then you've got the nuts, so you have something nutty. So we're thinking again about what are the pairing basics here? Well,
sherry.
Well, I mean, actually, it's not such a bad idea. So MCI just said sherry, which actually I was. Are you making fun of me for this?
How am I making fun of you?
You might. Okay, so we're thinking something nutty. We're thinking something automatically. Okay, pecan pie, sweet. We know we're talking about sweet wines. Okay, so we've matched the weight of the wine with the wine type. Good to go. All sugar, lots of butter. So you're going to need something with acidity to kind of lighten this up. And then you have something nutty. So where do you go from there? I think with pecan pie, you could go with something. You want to go with something as sweet or sweeter than the wine. I mean, I'm thinking Italian. If you can find a Vinsanto that's sweet, that could be really delicious. But I don't think your idea about sherry is such a bad idea. Pedro Jimenez would be an excellent example. So that's a red sherry. It's sweetened with muscatel and with some boiled down grape sugar. And that is really delicious. We have that over ice cream.
Mm-hmm. And we had it with macadamia nuts, right?
Go with some. Did we have it with macadamia nuts?
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Some nuts. It was
Either way, it's delicious. So I would recommend Pedro Jimenez. And now these days, that's pretty widely available. And that would be really delicious if you're having a pecan pie. So let me pop back over to Twitter to see if there's any more questions. If you guys don't ask the questions, we're not going to answer anymore, and we'll call it a day. That's okay. Let's see. Adam was thinking about bringing a bottle of sherry for dessert. Well, Adam, I mean, it depends on first of all, sherry. They shouldn't be calling it that. That still bugs me when they do that. You know, I love the Finger Lakes, but I don't like when they're using the names. Sherry comes from Jerez, and it should only really come from Spain, and blah, blah, blah.
like champagne.
Like champagne, exactly, MCIs. But I think that, I mean, sherry would be good if they've got, a sherry style wine would be good if it's sweet, if it's got good acidity, if you've had it before, all of that kind of stuff. And, I'm a big Finger Lakes advocate, but I would actually go for a semi-sweet Riesling from the Finger Lakes because it's more versatile. But then again, Adam, you've got me thinking about this. Most people are not going to offer you dessert wine. So if you are interested in something that's a delicious pairing and everyone forgets, then bring your own dessert wine. Because I think they'll probably open it anyway because they won't know what to do with it, right?
Right.
That's kind of the funny thing about that, right? Nobody's gonna, you'll bring something nobody knows, and then, they'll have to open it. There's just no other choice.
What is sherry style wine? What wine would be made in the style of sherry?
What would be a sherry style wine?
You said it could be, if it was a sherry style wine.
Well, I mean, sherry, well, this is getting into sherry making. Do we have to redo the sherry podcast? Fractional blending. I mean, it's essentially a wine that it's aldehydic. So it's not acidic at all. Mm-hmm. And it's, goes through this giant process of multiple blends mm-hmm. over the course of its life to come up with a house style. So it's super complex, and it depends on where it's from, right? You've got the Olorosos, which are a bit heavier, mm-hmm. Finos, which are lighter. So a sherry style would be, you'd have to have a whole Solera, which is what that's called, and do fractional blending and all this crazy stuff. But all right, we have a couple more questions. Any way to gauge the amount of wine you'd want to have on hand for a 10-person dinner? Okay, Mark at TV Open Source on Twitter. That is a phenomenal question. Yeah. And the answer is yes. So what you need to do is you need to figure out first of all, how many people are drinking and what type of drinkers they are. I know that's a little bit difficult, but for 10 people, you can do this. People always ask for weddings and stuff like that. And I'm like, I can't really help you with that. It's usually 2.5 glasses. You assume 2.5 glasses per person. But at a wedding like ours, we almost ran out of wine. We had 60 people at our wedding. And if we didn't drink through 7 cases of wine, I mean, there was nothing left. We had nothing left. Right. We had to shut down the wedding and go to the bar. So really, you have to think about who's.
That was before the ceremony.
I did have a couple before the ceremony. I'm sure you did too. I mean, what else was I supposed to do with the drag queen who was doing my makeup?
It was hot.
It was really hot. You needed something cool and refreshing. Okay, so Mark, the 10-person dinner, what I would say is if you were having 10 adults and they all drink, I would make sure that all of them have a glass of wine for, I would say 2 glasses of wine for, ahead of time. So, maybe a sparkling and a rosé or something like that. I would say, if you're doing a salad course, I mean, most families, just, I don't know, our family just puts everything on the table at the same time. Do you guys go through courses? Did you guys go through courses? I think your mom
it was pretty much the same time.
Yeah. So if you're doing everything at the same time, what I would do is just plop what am I trying to say? Plop a bunch of bottles on the table and have a couple of each. So, again, we're going to do probably 2 or 3. I think we're going to have about 10 or 15 people. We will be probably doing a bottle per person. It's not such a bad gauge, except for dessert wine. Okay. So for dessert wine, you want to make sure that there's a lot less. So let's say that you're doing for 10 people, you're doing, let's see, the first course would be each person gets 2 glasses, right? So that's 20 glasses. There's about 5 glasses per bottle.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 4 bottles right there for the beginning. And then if you assume 2 for the next thing, right? Like the 2 for the big dinner, maybe 3 for the big dinner. What do you think, MC Ice?
2 to 3, definitely.
Yeah, so go on the high side. So that's 30 glasses, right? Divided by 5, 6 bottles.
Mm-hmm.
So there's your 10 bottles, and then maybe 1 bottle for dessert. So 11. I did pretty well, about a bottle per person.
Yeah.
And what you need to also try to gauge is, what are you doing about, red versus white and all that kind of stuff. If you think that there's a preference, just make sure you have a little bit of
And
each.
how long people are going to be there? Are they showing up right before dinner? Or
Great.
Like 2 hours ahead of time?
That's totally true. If you're going to show up before dinner, if there's going to be schmoozing, if they're going to be hanging out afterwards, you might want to have something for them to drink after. So, there you go. Casey Dodd, for my family, it's all about the sides. For my family too, forget the turkey. Okay, so the carbs, when we're talking about carbs, Casey, if you are listening to this and you can comment back, it's not just about the carbs necessarily. I'm thinking it's about the flavors of the carbs. So if you caught the beginning of this, what I said is weight is important in the food, but really we're talking about the final flavors. So if there is some sort of final flavor in your mouth, the lasting flavor, that's what you're going to have to think about. So for instance, garlic mashed potatoes. Okay. So you have regular mashed potatoes where you might want to do an oak Chardonnay, and that's fine. Garlic mashed potatoes are a little bit more difficult. Oak Chardonnay may not be quite as good. You may want to do an unoaked Chardonnay because that oak and the garlic, like you've got some competing big flavors there. So you might want to go a little bit lighter. You might want to do something like a Gruner Veltliner, which has a bit more of a green note to it. Or you might want to do a Bordeaux Blanc, for instance, that's got the Sauvignon Blanc kind of green note to it, but at the same time has some smoothness to it. So you really have to think about specifically what dishes you have on the table, and then we can go from there. So please just tweet me back and I will do my best to give you some specific wines. Rick Weaver, hey Rick and Carrie, how are you? How do you address the gravy with what you're serving to drink? Again, you want to be thinking about the flavors that are coming out of the gravy. So the gravy is salty. That's probably the first thing that we're thinking about. You got to watch the tannins. You got to notice that if you listen to the Thanksgiving pairing episode, you know that I did not recommend any highly tannic wines, and I'm going to stick by that. It's not a good idea, in my opinion.
What are some highly tannic wines?
Cabernet Sauvignon is highly tannic. Some Zinfandel can be tannic, but usually not. You want to stay away from stuff like Tannat. You want to stay away from Petite Syrah. Even some Syrah you want to stay away from, especially cooler climate Syrah. So, but you just need to be careful. I did recommend Syrah in the podcast, but I'm thinking about lusher styles, fuller styles with lower tannin levels from the central coast of California, where it just doesn't get really hot and high tannins. So salt is the first thing, in the gravy. And then it's difficult to say. There's lots of garlic and herbs, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that would be the other 2 main components in the gravy. So you could follow what I was saying about, the watching how you would approach the gravy, but or the garlic mashed potatoes. What were you going to say, Sam?
Some can have like a bouillon-y flavoring. So.
Yeah, that chicken gaminess. So then that's where your fruity Pinot Noir could come in. Sure. It is challenging. I would just say, like I said, stay away from your tannic wine if you're going to be doing if you're going heavy on the gravy. And I would definitely, so if there's sort of a chicken stock,
there's going to be a lot of salt in that. So
again, you just have to be careful. Salt is a real killer. Salt is very tough with acid. Salt is, although some people really like that, it does bring out a brininess in a white. So, again, I hate to say it over and over again, rosé and your off dry wine. By the way, this is a Nero d'Avola because we had some. Is that here? No, you've got it. All right, here, give it to me. Show it to them. Got to be drinking, right? ABD, always be drinking. I'm just kidding. All right, so Rick and Carrie, I hope that answered your question. If you have something specific that you put in your gravy without giving away your secret sauce, of course, I'm more than happy to address that. All right, Twitter. Okay, we got some more. Mrs. Ellis 3D says, my family isn't into turkey. We have tri-tip and loads of sides. Is the pairing with tri-tip as obvious as it seems? Okay, now, my friend, first of all, it isn't as obvious as it seems. Yeah, if you're going to go for tri-tip, guess what? Forget everything I just said about the tannic wine and go in the opposite direction. However, that's great that you're having tri-tip, but we have to, again, think about the pairing magic that happens. Pairing magic happens, again, when there is flavors in the food and the flavors in the wine are complementary. So what are you putting on the tri-tip? I don't know. Is there some standard, right? We don't know what that is. So give it up, Mrs. Ellis 3D. Tell me what you are putting on the tri-tip and that can help you a little bit better. All right. So Donna Vaughn says, brining the turkey in brown sugar, garlic, and Worcestershire and then smoking it. What wine should I serve? Okay. 100% Donna, 100% Zinfandel, okay? Smokiness, you have the Worcestershire, which is going to be slightly, what's the right word for Worcestershire? It's kind of bittery, big, a tanginess. You have your garlic, and then you've got brown sugar. So if you listen to the pairing podcast, you would know what I said about this. High alcohol and the sugar are going to be very complementary. That smoky note, and that is really, let's think about this, the dominant note is, if you're going to smoke the turkey, all of that other stuff is kind of the dressing to it. The smoked note is going to come through stronger than everything else. Everything else is going to blend together, but that smoked note in your turkey is going to be the number one thing. And that Zinfandel, that rich kind of higher alcohol, look for something over 14% alcohol. Mendocino's got dimension. Paso Robles, some areas from Paso Robles have dimension. Dry Creek Valley, 100%. I've got nothing else to say besides that. However, make sure that you have some other wines to go with your sides. So that's super important. Casey got back to me. She said garlic. She's our side obsessed lady. Garlic, bacon, pancetta, herby for potatoes, stuffing, and mac and cheese for the vegetarians. All right, so you got the bacon, you got the pancetta, Pinot Noir, an earthy Pinot Noir. You want to go American? Go Oregon. You want to go French? Go Burgundy. But what I would say is definitely that beautiful herbal, and then with that earthy meat. You could also go Syrah from the Northern Rhone if you wanted to. And then stuffing is, again, you've got the herbs and mac and cheese for the vegetarians. That, of course, I'm going to tell you is to get an acidic white. Actually, what I'd say for the mac and cheese, what do I think is a good pair? We still have to do that episode of like common foods. Yes. I'm so sorry that we never did that, or we haven't done it yet. Mac and cheese, you need some acidity there to lighten that up. And you don't want to go with anything too green. So I would actually go for a Chardonnay. Yeah, for Chablis. Yeah, I'd do a Chablis or some sort of Chablis style, something that is fairly neutral. I would stay away from oak, and I'd go for high acid.
What's earthier? Pinot from Oregon or Burgundy?
Burgundy's far earthier, but so MC Ice's question, if you can hear, was what's earthier, Pinot from Burgundy or Pinot from Oregon? Oregon does a great job, though, of making some really delicious earthy Pinots. So, Casey, that's my recommendation to you. Don't forget the white for the mac and cheese. And if they like red, you could give them, I wouldn't give them Pinot with mac and cheese. I think that's just too heavy. For that, maybe, I don't know, maybe even a Barbera, something to bring out the lightness with the acidity. You definitely need acidity. All right. So, and Casey's saying Gruyere in the mac and cheese with some Dijon. Okay, I'm sticking with my Pinot for that. All righty, Kathy. Hey, Kathy, how are you? So, Kathy on Twitter, what wine do you think goes best with butternut squash soup? We're actually having that also. Kathy is our cook. She's an awesome cook. I know that. I've never had her food, but I know that she's a big cook. All right, roasted squash with roasted shallots and garlic with veggie broth. Well, we're in white territory. Again, you don't want to do red because it's going to kill some of the subtle flavors. Shallots are so beautiful because they are not as strong as onions. They're kind of a lighter flavor. And, you know, with all of the veggie broth, I'm sure you're gonna season the soup and it's going to be super delicious. It's also going to be slightly creamy. Again, here's our gosh, it turned out to be like, you know, a multiple MVP. Rosé. Okay, I'm going to say rosé. And then I'm also going to say that I think that unoaked Chardonnay idea actually from California may be your best bet, Kathy. But I think a rosé with butternut squash soup is the money move. And that's what I will be recommending to people to have at our, either that or, by the way, if you want to do a cremant or you want to do something bubbly that's a little bit fruity, Prosecco, you could do that too. That'll lighten the whole thing up and still stay on the fruity. And then I'm also going to say that I think that unoaked Chardonnay idea actually from California is there a best bet, Kathy? But is there a, what did you say, MC Ice?
A region from California that specializes in unoaked Chardonnay?
No, there is no region in California that specializes in unoaked Chardonnay. You just have to find a producer that does it. Okay. So I would say from you know, Mer Soleil is still going to be super fruity. So, you know, you've got all of that. I would try your best to get something that is fruity, but not over the top in terms of the actual fruit. You know, like it's got some subtlety. That's why I'm recommending Chablis or some sort of unoaked Chardonnay somewhere. Okay, so that's that. Mrs. Ellis 3D, the tri-tips rub with garlic, pepper, and loads of spices, and it's pretty salty. So we go back again to this garlic notion. Yeah, you're gonna have to watch your pairing here. Garlic, pepper, lots of delicious spices. I'm going to tell you that you're going to want to go probably with a New World Syrah. You might even want to go with a Petite Syrah in this case because it can stand up to the garlic because it's fruity. So you want to look for that balance of flavor. And at the same time, make sure that it's got a tannic backbone on that tri-tip in order to be able to stand up to it. So I would say Petite Syrah, and in that case, you're going to go, of course, with something from probably Lodi. You might want to go with something from maybe in the Central Coast. There aren't too many places that make Petite Syrah. So I think just find one that's pretty good and go for it. That would be.
What's their address and what time is dinner served?
MC Ice is, by the way, Mrs. Ellis 3D. MC Ice is really not interested in turkey apparently, and he would like to come to your house. So if you'd like to send your address, Elizabeth at winefornormalpeople.com. Wine 101 says, can't comment on YouTube. Okay, if you're listening and you can't comment, please go to the Google Hangout link. You can look on the Facebook page. You can look on a couple of different things here, or you can go on Google Plus. Lots of different ways to comment, or keep going on Twitter if you're watching. Okay, and I'm sorry, I just saw Vino 101. Can't comment on YouTube if there's an antipasti platter. We start with sparkling Lambrusco. Yes, that's always good, although I will tell you that I'm not sure where you're located, Wine 101, but I will tell you that Lambrusco is not easy to come by everywhere. So you've got to So not everybody can get good Lambrusco. And if you can't get good Lambrusco, don't get it at all, because bad Lambrusco is really, really, really bad.
Is there a near substitute?
For Lambrusco, well,
Yeah.
Lambrusco is red sparkling wine.
Mhm.
So I guess you could do a sparkling red Shiraz, but it's going to have the same issue.
Okay.
Not good stuff.
Okay.
Really sad. Not great stuff at all when it's from the, when it's cheap and poorly made. So that is that. Let's see what other questions. Sorry, I'm looking on here. All right, we've got really no Facebookers. It's impressive how few Facebookers we've given our very active. I think our Twitter followers are more active in the space of video here. All right, it doesn't look like if you guys.
My mom are on Facebook.
Your mom, hilarious. Okay, if you have any more questions, please forward them to us right now, because we're gonna be wrapping up in a second. Mrs. Ellis 3D said we're welcome anytime we're in LA. And she's had great petite Syrahs from Temecula. Local.
All right.
Way to go. Cheers to you, Mrs. Ellis 3D. We're totally excited that you are able to find a wine that's going to match perfectly. Can you please report back to us? Just say yes. We're going to assume that's a yes. So I don't know what others. Okay, Murray, sorry, pairing for collards. Man, you guys are pushing the limits of my pairing abilities here. Okay, again, we're gonna go back to the same thing every single time. What are we thinking about? They've got pork in them. And are we thinking about, okay, so Murray, if you could let me know about spices, like what are you putting on? Is it salt?
Vinegar on them?
Vinegar, all that kind of stuff. You gotta let me know what you've got going on here, and then we can we figure it out here. So, collards, the thing that you have to remember about collards or anything, if you're having kale, I know kale is super popular. You got bitter greens here. So, or even rocket, if you're having a rocket salad, arugula lettuce is rocket. So if you're having anything like that, again, you're thinking, okay, you've got something super bitter, right? So you need to find a wine that's going to be able to accommodate that, even if, and if it's got vinegar, that's going to be very, very difficult. At that point, we're thinking
vinegar with hot peppers in it. There's a lot of times.
Vinegar, vinegar and hot peppers. So, this is difficult, because with the vinegar, I'd probably tell you to go something like a Zinfandel, but hot pepper, you're not going to want to do that because of the high alcohol level. What I would say is, stick with, I'd say you said sparkling Vouvray, sure, okay. That would be fine. You want something pretty neutral for this, and I think, you could do something like a Gruner. I would do something slightly sweet. Just I wouldn't concentrate so much on it. It's going to be pretty hard to pair with collard greens, and I know that a lot of people really love them, but they're not. They're much better with beer than they are with wine. But to your point, I think you're totally thinking right. Sparkling Vouvray, that's kind of a beerish type of thing. I'd say just maybe slightly sweet, something slightly sweet to offset the bitter, because that can be really tough to take.
Brussels sprouts with bacon.
Yeah, Brussels sprouts with bacon. We did address that in the podcast. So, we're talking about the creaminess of that. And, bacon is kind of earthy. I'd say there's your Chablis again, or the Rosé. Rosé could be pretty versatile on that. Okay. So, Murray saying beer, champagne. Okay. Champagne, again, maybe just a little bit too fine, so the collard flavor could crush it. You're going to be having other things besides collards. So, just be careful about what you sip before you eat that. Maybe have that in between, like the wine, you not use that as the final flavor in your mouth. The Brussels sprouts with mushrooms, Pinot, roasted turkey. I think if you get a really nice earthy Pinot, you should be in good shape. All right. So couple last questions here. Casey says we'll probably stuffed turkey. We'll be stuffed turkeys by the time, but there's always room for pie. So Casey, we did answer this question on the the YouTube. And okay, sorry, Kathy, thank you for letting me know. Abby Simon asks, what's the perfect dessert to pair with a 10-year tawny port? Remember that tawny port, 10-year tawny port is actually, sadly, port is a very complex subject.
I like the order of operations here, starting with the wine and then figuring out the food to go
Yeah,
with it.
man, wine should be the star, right? Okay, so the tawny port tends to be a little bit nuttier. So 10-year tawny port actually does not mean that the tawny port is 10 years old. It means that the oldest wine in it is 10 years old. I know that's totally screwed up, but that's how they do it. Tawny port is not sweet. Tawny port tends to be nutty. It tends to have sort of rich almond flavors. It does have a little bit of almost like I don't. It's kind of hard to describe. Kind of oxidized-ish flavors. It's aged generally in a large cask, so there's lots of air getting in. And if I were pairing something with a tawny port, I personally would not pair it with dessert because again, there's this sweetness issue, and tawny tends not to be that sweet. I would actually pair it with the cheese plate. And if you're gonna have cheeses, I would do that, nuts and cheeses. And if you wanted to do something like a honeycomb with cheeses, which I absolutely love, I would say that that's probably a really nice complement to it. But dessert with tawny port's tough because again, this kind of violates my rule of that the dessert wine has to be sweeter than the dessert. And most tawny, there are some that are slightly sweet, but most are not. So let's see. Okay, couple more questions. Okay, Murray is asking for Burgundy. Which part of Burgundy? Well, it depends on your budget, my friend. I mean, you know, we could talk very high dollar, but you know, I don't know what your budget is and what you're looking for. The best values, I think, are okay. Grand Cru is out. Premier Cru, you know, Premier Cru in the world of reds is also pretty expensive. I would definitely stay away from some of the very light things. You know, you might want to do a Pommard. I think that those are very good value from Beaune. You might want to do a Beaune, just a regular Beaune, a Premier Cru Beaune, which shows very, very nicely. If you're going to go in the Côte de Nuit, I'd stay away from places like Volnay. I would stay away from some of the lighter things. You might want to go for Corton, something heavier, a little bit heavier, given that you're going for mushrooms and, you know, the roasted turkey and some of the other, and then you're going to have pork and all of these other things on your table. So if I were you, I'd probably go for one of the heavier Burgundies. And of course, that's all relative. It's certainly not like a California heavy Burgundy. So, and you know, again, like you said, Oregon Pinot, terrific. So chocolate, by the way, chocolate pecan pie, chocolate bourbon pecan pie, Zinfandel port or ruby port, chocolate. And I mean, that's going to be red all the way. Got to do it. Or Bonjour from the south of France. And apple pie, yeah, you could do a sauterne with apple pie. So any other questions? Casey, I got you on the dessert. We've just talked about a number of options for dessert. And I think that that's it. Let me just check some of the other. Sorry, I'm trying to hop around to all of the channels and see if there are any people posted all over the place they're watching it. Everybody's watching it everywhere. Let me just see one more. We're done with Twitter. We are done with Facebook. MCIs, do you have anything to say?
No,
Have anything to add?
No.
You know?
I'm ready to eat.
Are you ready to eat? Are you ready for me to make a ton of food tomorrow?
What are you making?
I don't know. I have no idea. I'm making whatever my mother tells me I have to make. I think that's really what's going on here. All right, guys. Well, with that, this has been a live video feed of Wine for Normal People, and I am super excited that we had a nice turnout and that everybody got their questions answered. And we will be doing this again next year, of course. And I hope that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Cheers to you and to your family. Please be safe. And thank you all very much. And I hope to see you in some of the classes. Although sadly, I think that we've run into finally the situation where I think the live part of the online classes is going to be going away, and we're going to do pre-recorded stuff because it just seems like people's schedules aren't jiving, and there's a big demand for pre-recorded stuff. So we'll still do some live stuff, but mostly it'll be stuff like this. So anyway, thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays, and I hope to see you guys in future class and also on Facebook, Twitter, and wherever else we all are. All right, take care. Happy Thanksgiving.